Maria's story contains graphic descriptions which may be disturbing. These images of sea turtles were drawn by 7-year-old Abigail. Along seashores, the unhatched eggs of the endangered species are greatly valued and protected by state and federal law. With the unborn human life, it is not so. Meet Maria, one of 2 young women who each made the choice to have an abortion. Now close friends whose stories are deeply intertwined. It began as a relationship between 2 friends.
He was fun. He was, whenever I was around him, he was the first person I told about anything in my life, my past, and he understood. We had a good friendship, but then we didn't set boundaries, and that's when the sex, started happening. And it was giving me, when I look back on it, temporary happiness.
And then there were 3.
I noticed the past few weeks before I was about 1.5 weeks late on my period, and I was noticing that I was always having to go to the bathroom, and I was waking up either feeling really nauseous, like not throwing up, but just like I was craving pizza. I waited a couple weeks because I was in denial because I was trying to wait for my period, and then when I was about 3 weeks late, I ended up taking a test, and I was pregnant.
With good intentions gone south.
At the time, I had never been with a guy, as a virgin. I was, planning on waiting, for marriage. It was just like, let's go with the flow, as so many young people do in this country. It's just, we're friends, sex is casual. We weren't boyfriend and girlfriend. We were just, friends with benefits.
Then came the overwhelming questions and options.
The day that I found out I was pregnant, I knew in an instant that my life was going to be changed forever, no matter what I decided. As with any woman in America or any woman who finds herself pregnant, you have pretty much 3 options, to have it, to give it up for adoption or for an abortion. And at that time, I really didn't think I was going to have the abortion, but I was faced with, telling the guy that I was with. I was faced with what, at that point I really thought okay, am I going to raise this or am I going to give it up for adoption? I was faced with those 2 issues at that time. And I was faced with, who I was going to tell. And once that was they really confirmed it, I waited a few days to tell him because I didn't know how he would react. I was scared. I thought, though, after talking with my best friend, I had told my best girlfriend at the time, she was the only one who knew that I was pregnant, and she was encouraging me, she's like, you have to tell him. I really knew that, if I had chosen to have the baby, I would have gotten help from his family, from friends. I would have, and there were times when I thought about talking to other friends of ours who I know would have helped me, and I knew it. Sometimes things in your brain, but your emotions get involved, and then I was going by what the guy wanted me to do and was pressuring me to just keep quiet about it. But there were alternatives, there always are. I didn't have any type of relationship with my parents. When your family's very dysfunctional, has abuse in it, that I chose to walk away from it. So when I did that, that's when I kind of put everything on that guy.
A 9 o'clock appointment, never to be forgotten.
I remember it, but I don't really. I just kind of shut up myself off emotionally. I filled out paperwork, shut out my ID and everything, and then I sat and waited. They said it would have been maybe 15, 20 minutes. I didn't get seen even by the nurse till about 11:30. The only thing I ever felt in there was when I was walking in the hallway with the nurse, and I had kind of looked to my left, and there was a long hallway, and there was a white door, and I really got hit with this feeling of that's evil. She kind of went over you're choosing, we did if I want to do surgical or the medical abortion, the pills, and I want to do the pills. And she kind of said, they gave me a 24-hour hotline number, in case anything went wrong with, the abortion. But she kept reassuring me, it's going to be fine. You're 5.5 weeks pregnant. It's nothing. It's a clump of cells. You're going to be fine. He said, "Oh, you're 5.5 weeks pregnant," as I recall, said, that. And he, gave me a pill, half of a pill, which was the RU486 pill, which is known by. Gave me a cup of water and had me swallow that in the clinic. And I remember looking at the time just randomly as I was swallowing it, and it was 2:45, and that was the moment my life really changed from then, and I didn't realize it then. He gave me a brown bag. I was to take 12 pills 24 hours later from the time I swallowed the first, the abortion pill. It gave me instructions. He said because I was so early in my pregnancy, I would have no complications, he said, at all. I'd probably have a few period cramps and bleeding, but he kept saying, "Oh, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine." He said I was to take the 12 pills 4 at a time every 4 hours, and I was also given a prescription, kind of like a very high dosage of. He said, "This is for the painkillers." He's like, "You won't even need this. You'll be fine." He told me to come back a week later for a checkup, but he said, "You'll be fine," and I walked out.
The start of a dark and painful journey.
24 hours later, I was in my room, and I had the bottle of pills, and the guy came over. He was going to be with me that night. I told him I was feeling fine. I had just eaten some pizza, and I swallowed the first 4 pills, and within 30 minutes, I had thrown up 3 times, and it was hard. I didn't really feel much pain then, but it was a throwing up, and then I started bleeding a little bit. That was the first 4 hours. The next 4 hours, I took 4 more pills, and that's when it hit, the physical pain. I literally remember the pain literally felt like someone was taking a knife just up and down and slicing me open, and I was bleeding so much. I was soaking through pads. I was shaking. I would go from being freezing to I was like in a desert, 100 degrees. There was one point that within the next couple hours, I was in the bathroom by myself. I was throwing up. I had uncontrollable diarrhea. I had just blood pouring out of me and just little clumps. I was taking the but it did nothing, did absolutely nothing. And by the time literally 2 hours in the bathroom, I had to crawl back to my room. I couldn't even walk. I was so weak. Another 4 hours came, and I took the last 4 pills, and the worst pain ever, and all he could do was hold me. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I thought, I can't even talk to God, pray to God right now, because what I'm doing is wrong. It was rough. And the next week, they said you might have occasional cramping and bleeding. It was constant cramping and bleeding.
You made a comment that you felt you couldn't talk to God. Did you have a personal relationship with the Lord at that time?
I didn't. I can say that now. I thought I was playing that religion game. I was raised in the church. I went to church my whole life, but I just hadn't given my life to God. I thought that if I went to church, that made me a Christian, I was okay. And it wasn't. And I hadn't dealt with things from my past, and I just, I played that appearance of being a Christian, but a personal relationship, no. That didn't happen until after everything.
1 week later, a return to the clinic.
A week later, I go to the clinic. I had called a few days before because I was concerned about how much bleeding I was doing, and they were like, no, you're fine. Sometimes people just bleed, heavier. You're tiny. Just wait till Friday. So I went in on Friday. They told me to come in at 9 o'clock. Came in at 9 o'clock. Didn't get seen until 1:30. And when I came in, they gave me the shot because of my blood type. And then the doctor did an ultrasound, and as I recall, he said, wow, this didn't work. And he said something along the line, there was a nurse in the room with me, and she kind of looked up at him and was writing something down on a paper. And then he had said something to her like, she's the 10th one today it's been failed. Something along those lines. I remember hearing like 10 people or something, the 10th person. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, how, like, I'm the 10th person, like, what's going on here, And I kind of looked at him, and I didn't say anything because I was kind of just like, well, what happens now? And he turned the ultrasound machine away from me, and he said, sometimes this happens. And as I recall, he said, he's like, it's going to be okay. He's like, we don't have to surgically remove this. But he wrote me a prescription and gave me 12 more of the misoprostol, I think, or was it 12 more of the, I think it was called misoprostol pills. And he sent me home. He gave me another prescription of the like painkillers, which is really just, and he said to come back in 3 days.
Alone and bleeding, a plea in the night.
The guy wasn't with me that night. I could feel at that time that he was just kind of walking away from it and just didn't want to be a part of it anymore. It was too hard. I don't know. I took the first set of pills. This time was more blood and more clots every single time. And it was the pain again. The pain was something unlike anything I'd ever felt in my life. And I thought like the first night a week ago was the worst night ever, and this night was just 10 times worse. It literally was a constant, like someone was just continuously taking that knife and slicing me up and down and just not stopping. I took another 4 pills, and throughout the night, I literally just lived in my bathroom that night. That was a night that I literally thought to myself, like, I'm gonna die tonight. There was so much blood that was coming out of me, and the clumps, which weren't clumps, they were my child. I was sobbing, and that night I finally like said out loud, because I literally thought, I'm going to die. Like, I'm gonna have to call 911, like, and they're gonna have to come, like, and take me to the hospital. And I remember vividly saying that night, I said, I don't want to die. I said, if you let me live, God, I will do whatever you want for the rest of my life. Just let me live.
Reassessing an easy breezy abortion.
How many pills at this point collectively had you taken? Do you know?
Yeah, I had taken 24 pills. What was supposed to be an easy, breezy abortion was only supposed to be 12. I was taking 24 at that point.
Maria again returns to the clinic.
3 days later, I go back to the clinic on a Monday. They tell me again to come in, and right when they open at 9 o'clock, they'll see me this time, they promise, as soon as they can. I don't get pulled back until almost after 12. And I'm pulled back by a different nurse this time, and she asked me, why are you here today? We don't do, checkups by the doctors, and only on Thursdays and Fridays. And I got very upset. I said, they told me to come back here today. I feel like something's wrong. I'm bleeding, I'm cramping this. And I was so, I was sobbing. I'm like, something's wrong. And she goes, I'm sorry, you'll have to come back. She said, Wednesday. And I was like, are you serious? Like, Wednesday, like, you told me to come back today, and there's nothing I could do. So she said, come back Wednesday. She said, come back at 9, and we promise this time we'll get you in. We'll see you immediately. You're the first on the list. I come back Wednesday. I get there right as they open, and I had been sitting there almost 3 hours again. And finally, I go up to the window, and at this point, I'm furious. I'm like, I have been sitting here for 3 hours. This is my 4th, 5th time here. You guys keep telling me the wrong days. Like, what is going on? And the woman at the desk got a very nasty attitude with me and said, I don't know who keeps telling you to come today. We do checkups on Thursdays and Fridays. He's not here today. We can't see you. She goes, and I just kind of blew up at her. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I was kind of making a scene in the waiting room. All the women and people were looking at me, and she tried to calm me down. And she's like, okay, the doctor actually is here today, she said, as I recall. And she's like, but we can't probably see you until after 3 o'clock or 4, really late this afternoon. I said, fine, I just need to be seen. I sat back down again, and I had heard through the kind of very thin walls, and the receptionist had gone back, and I had heard her yelling at other nurses, and she said, I don't care about that girl, make that, bitch wait.
Maria tells us she voiced her anger and walked out, and then through the doors into an emergency room.
Waited one more day, and then, Friday came around and I wasn't getting lighter on the bleeding. And I finally decided then that I needed to go to the emergency room. That I was in the ER. I was in the hospital by myself, completely alone. When I walked into the ER, I told them what had happened. They immediately put me in a room, got me checked out, like immediately. I think what happened, I still had tissue in me, so it was an infection. And they sent me over to the a women's and children's hospital right across the street from them, because they were just like, a regular ER hospital.
Another exam, more blood work, and a different doctor.
The doctor came in. He was really understanding and patient. So he prescribed me 10 more pills that I was to take over the next week. And at that point, I'd been at 24 pills, so it was like 34 pills. He prescribed me oxycodone as the pain. I had brought my, containers, all the medicines from the clinic, and he looked at it and he was like, I remember him saying, looking at me, he just looked at the bottle. He's like, these are like sugar pills. He said, I don't know how you survived this. I don't know how you lived through this. I'm sorry. Not like actually sugar pills, but he said this is just taking, he's like, these are yeah, that's what he said. That's what he said. He's like, this is sugar pills. He said, this isn't for pain, anything. He says you can get this over the counter for a headache. He said, this is sugar pills pretty much. And he apologized. He said, I'm sorry. He goes, I don't even know what you've been through.
Finally, an end in sight.
I got the prescription that night. Finally, by each day, the cramping was getting lighter. The bleedings finally started to get really lighter. So, it finally physically, I was getting better finally. The bleeding, the cramping had stopped, and there was no more, the clumps coming out of me anymore. And that kind of put the end to the physical part of the abortion. Emotionally, this is a thing I didn't know about a medical abortion. When you're pregnant, you have, hormones in you, pregnancy hormones. They call them the HGC levels. And mine were through the roof. So even though I'd taken these pills, my child was out of me, but my body was still screaming at me that I was pregnant. So I was very hormonal. I was very angry at myself. I think I was so ashamed. I was so mad at the world. I was mad at the guy, and I guess I kind of just lived in denial though for a few days. But I remember I didn't get out of bed for a couple days. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I just sobbed. I knew what I had done was wrong, and I wanted desperately to die just to be with my baby. 8 days after everything had happened, after being in the hospital, when the guy just really ended everything with me, just walked away. And that's when, that night that he told me, I'm sorry, bye, is pretty much what he said to me. That's when it hit me full force, what I had done. I was the lowest I'd ever been in my life.
I want to show you something. And I want you to look at this man's name on this form. You know what took place with you. Are you aware that there was harm to others?
At the time that I had done it, and during it, no. I learned about all of that after. I learned a lot of things after everything had happened. So,
Maria, let me talk about the experience and how it relates to forgiveness. Have you come to forgive that doctor and the people that spoke harshly?
I have. I think in order for me to have gotten there, I had to forgive myself first and understand that God forgave me the moment I took that first pill. I swallowed it. He forgave me instantly. And it took me a long time to really, once I understood that God forgave me and that God, was going to use my story. Once I came to understand that I finally forgave myself, then I realized, clearly what the Bible states and what God was convicting me of was to forgive the doctor, forgive those nurses there, forgive the guy that I was with. Well, I believe that you're free to choose what you want to choose, but you're not free from the consequence of your choices. The Bible clearly states what, we're commanded to do, which is to forgive. Forgiveness is a gift, but there are many things that forgiveness aren't too. And I learned that, I really understood that too. Forgiveness doesn't excuse what the doctor is doing, continues to do today. There are consequences for everything you decide to do in life, whether good or bad, whether you see it immediately or you see it years down the road. But I do firmly believe that God would love for that doctor to repent and come to conviction. Now, what a story that would be. But it's not, I nor anyone else can make anyone come to repentance or conviction.
Love, grace, and forgiveness.
God's in the business of doing miracles, and God can do that, So once I really understood that people who could have so easily thrown me away, judged me for what I chose, instead showed me and showered me with love and grace and forgiveness.
What brought Maria to this point? She's quick to note it took a little help from her friends.
I finally just spoke out loud. I said, I need help. I just was talking to God, I guess. I need help. Send me something, anything that can make me think I can live again. And that literally a minute later, I just in my heart said, call this woman. That night after I got off the phone with Woodley, I found healing. I felt so much better, the weight was lifted off of me. She has been such a blessing in my life ever since then.
What is that woman's name?
Her name is Jessica Eaton, but I call her Woodley. Everyone kind of knew her as Woodley. Slowly started going back to church and reaching out to some friends, and they got me involved in a counseling program at First Baptist Orlando. It's called First Steps. And I think it was then that I finally, going through that counseling program was hard. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad I did it. It's what I needed, but I know now why women for years live in denial. It's hard looking at a wound that big, not only with dealing with my abortion, but with past things in my life. I slowly learned to heal. I slowly learned to understand, God's forgiveness, God's grace to me. And it was the hardest time in my life, but it was also the best time in my life because I was at rock bottom. But the good thing about being at rock bottom is that you can only go up. And I kind of consider it a blessing now too. I was hurt by the guy just walking away, but it got me to where I needed to be with my relationship with Christ. And I finally, instead of putting my worth in this guy or any person or caring about what they think, God was really convicting my heart, come to me, Maria. I'm the person you need to come to. I'm here now today, and it's crazy. It hasn't even been a year since everything happened. And the fact that I can share it today, and this is my second time sharing, is really proof of time doesn't heal, but God does.